Okay. All right. So I don't need to introduce myself. You all know me. But this is what we're talking about tonight. What is it? What do we know about it? And how can we best prepare to defend against it? Okay. So, do any of you follow the High Wire?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Dell Big Tree Show. On January 30th, he had this PhD on. His name's James Lyons Weiler, and he's a research scientist with more of an emphasis in these infectious diseases. So he's written a couple books, and I just wanted to give him credit because a lot of what I'm about to talk about was what he discussed on the show. So as I was listening to the show, I was sitting there and basically typed up my own transcript and verbatim. And so a lot of these things that I'm going to share right here on these upcoming slides are from Dr. James. We know that there's level 4 biosafety labs, and they exist. They're all over the world. We've got them here in CDC. They're in Canada. And we know for a fact that one of these exists in Wuhan, China. These facilities are the highest security labs, and as far as clearance, protection, and security go. So as of January 30th, so again, these things, let me just show you this real fast too, before we keep going. I just wanted to point out that these sites are actually very helpful. So this is from Elsevier, which is, I think they correlate with the Lancet, and they're keeping like a day-to-day, like an updating site. Like if any new research comes out, they're gonna post it, okay? So just to give you here, this is just elsevier.com. You'll find journal articles, book chapters, early stage research. I'm a big fan of these types of flow charts and stuff. Are you chilled? Do you have a sore throat or a cough? The answer is yes. Check your SpO2 levels. If you're really struggling and you're having respiratory distress, this could mean that you have it, right? So as far as test kits and stuff, I need to investigate a little bit more in that, of how they're actually diagnosing COVID-19. But anyways, just as a resource, check this website out. The other one is from the CDC. This is just front and center. This is because anyone that now hops on the CDC, you're going to be able to access this. And this is what I was telling you here. So for example, I could come in and click on cases in the US, and we're going to get a day-to-day. So this page will be updated regularly at noon on Mondays through Fridays. Numbers close out at 4 p.m. So every single day they're posting stuff. So this is all, like, as this progresses, we're learning more. So what I'm going to share with you tonight is just basically what I had scrounged up and everything that I could find as of Tuesday. So now we're in Thursday, things change, okay? But I just wanted you to have these websites as a resource because they actually are very helpful. So getting back to the slide. So there's a lot of questions that people were asking, okay? Did someone bring it into the lab? Was it something that escaped from a BSL-4 facility? Did this actually come from a food source? Because some were speculating that it was, the market that was a couple miles down the road from this facility where someone just ate a bad bat or a snake and then all of a sudden got the virus, and that's where it started to spread, right? So that's one of the questions I asked there too. Did it come from a selection or consumption of animals from the market? Snake, bat. One team of researchers, when they first started looking into this, speculated this was a hypothesis because sometimes viral recombination among different species can happen. And we know for a fact that bats and snakes can carry coronavirus. So that was kind of something that they threw out there. It is a possibility, and this does occur. Coronaviruses are found in both species, but the researchers couldn't find a genetic match at the N-terminus of the genome of the new COVID-19. They couldn't take this new thing that we had found and match it to anything that was found in nature, right? So this is just a picture I wanted to post. This actually just goes to show that this lab actually does exist. So these are some virologists working in the Wuhan facility. China, to their credit, very quickly actually gave us the information. They said, they let us know exactly what the strain looked like. They said, here it is, this is the new COVID-19 coronavirus, and this is exactly what it looks like. So please help us figure this out. We want to know where this came from and whatnot, right? So this was an article that was written titled "Chinese Researchers Reveal the Draft Genome of the Virus Implicated in the Wuhan Pneumonia Outbreak." So they did their job in letting us know, and that's how doctors like James get a hold of this information and then start doing their own research on it, okay? So a strange element was actually found that matched a vector technology that dates back to 1998, and we're going to talk about what that means. Vector technology is when a molecular biologist insert new genes into a virus or a bacteria. It's called a P-shuttle SM vector, and it's very unusual to find a vector text sequence like this in a virus that's circulating amongst human populations. So this particular virus has a lab origin, and they found that out because of what they were studying. They found that there was a spike protein in the virus itself that was 100% man-made, okay? And I'll show you a little bit more about that. James said that we find that it was a SARS protein that was put into a coronavirus for the purpose of making the vaccine work more efficiently. And that's just how they do vaccine science. When they're getting ready and prepping to release a new vaccine to a new disease, they have to manipulate a little bit to make it more efficient, get that immune response, and that's how these things work. So that's why the element is in there. It's to create a more reactogenic, a more immunogenic vaccine. And patents exist for all these things related to the vaccines, and this patent is matched with exactly what's in the coronavirus that's going around right now.
So the disease that didn't exist, we have a what do they call the vaccine for,
Mm-hmm.
in advance before it actually was found
Well,
in humans.
I'll get into a little bit more of that, because what they found is that the spike protein was matched to one of the earlier SARS illnesses. So they were creating a vaccine for that one, and that one, the one I'm speaking about, dates back to 2008. So that's where they found the spike protein that matches exactly with what's in this one. So if you think about it that way, they're working on these things years ago, and now it gets out. So that's what we're talking about, is the SARS protein. Okay, so they call these Frankenstein viruses because they're in their lab and they're messing with everything and altering them a little bit in order to study the vaccines. They're more contagious than natural viral compounds. And the thing about this one is, and they've announced this over and over again, is you can be an asymptomatic carrier of the virus, and I think that's one thing that scares a number of people, is that you don't even have to be showing any symptoms of the disease and walking around Costco buying your water and toilet paper and getting everyone sick in the store, right?
Isn't the guy that was on the cruise ship that's now in Utah, he has never shown symptoms?
Right, he's in the hospital, right?
Yeah.
He's asymptomatic.
Well, and I heard, does he do his own podcast? Because I heard about this guy.
He does Facebook Lives, yeah.
He does Facebook Live and things like that. And that was one of the things he was talking about. It was like, yeah, I got it, and I was quarantined, and now I'm here, and I tested positive, but I'm not sick.
He's never had anything.
Right?
But that's true of most viruses, that like we
Right.
might all have viruses all the
Oh,
time.
all the time. Bacteria,
But we
virus, all
just
the
are
time.
fine.
Right. So
it would be fine.
So if you use the SARS vaccine in ferrets, rats, or monkeys, and then they get a secondary infection of the SARS, there's a consequence to that. And I'll show you the study that we're talking about here. The immunocompromised are really the ones that are at risk here. So if you think, what does that mean? Who's immunocompromised, right? These are people that have tanked immune systems.
What about autoimmunity?
Yeah, that too, yep. And just, it's the same things, like we don't want grandma to slip and fall and break her hip, because if she gets in the hospital and catches one of those bugs in the hospital, that's where she's going to develop pneumonia and pass away. So this is the group that's really at risk for this, and I'll show you all the numbers, okay? So this was the study. Immunization with the SARS coronavirus vaccine leads to pulmonary immunopathology on challenge with the SARS virus. So some of these, they're interesting, but do you get what that means? So what they were doing, and look at the date, this is back in 2012, so they're working on the SARS coronavirus, they're all in the same family. So the one we're dealing with now is called COVID-19. This one that the study speaks to was looked at in 2012 from the previous SARS studies. So basically what they're saying is let's just read the conclusion. These SARS-CoV vaccines all induced antibody and protection against the infection with the SARS-CoV. However, challenge of mice means, when they say use that word challenge, that just means, okay, now we're going to expose them again to the actual virus and see if the vaccines actually worked or not, okay? So the challenge of the mice, given any of the vaccines, led to an occurrence of Th2 type immunopathology, suggesting hypersensitivity to the SARS-CoV components was induced. So we need to take caution proceeding with application of this vaccine because, in other words, you get the shot, we think we're safe and we think it works, but you now just expose yourself to getting sick over and over and over again from the same virus. And sometimes it's worse, okay? And what I mean by sometimes it's worse, and the reason why I'm really passionate about this topic is my oldest son, Hank, gets pertussis over and over and over again. And he's our only child that we ever vaccinated with DTaP. So the 112-year odyssey of pertussis and pertussis vaccines, mistakes made and implications for the future, this abstract talks about the exact same concept that happens with DTaP. When you get the shot, the only thing that it really does is keep you asymptomatic. They've actually found that pertussis in the chimpanzee studies cultures in the respiratory system, back of the throat, down in the lungs, and they can be carriers for up to 28 days, right? Asymptomatic, but this one's being derived from DTaP specifically. So you get the shot, you're actually a carrier, and you wonder why all our schools are petri dishes and the kids are getting sick all the time, over and over and over again, right? So same concept with the SARS vaccine. We see it in DTaP. These are things that just happen, and they are mistakes because there's a lot of harm that's being done. SARS in 2008, which was the one with the spike that we're talking about, it actually went away without a vaccine because they actually couldn't create a vaccine. The scientists that were trying to work on it, they couldn't get it approved due to the fact that all the animals were dying in the trials. So they wouldn't even let them pump it out because the animals were dying in the trials of the vaccine. These types of viral strains, the manipulated ones, are easily transmittable. They are twice as infectious as regular SARS virus. And you can look up Jonathan Reed's info. He's a doctor out of the UK. He speaks a lot to this topic. So we're very, very certain this was not a wild virus at all. So no bats, no snakes, no, what's that quote from Ghostbusters? Dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria, right?
Yeah.
So it's a lab acquired. It either came from vaccine trials that they were doing or it just escaped the lab. That has to be the only two scenarios that we're looking at here. So contagion-wise, either one of those options is not good because it's easily transmittable, and that's why you see this kind of flying all over the place now, right? What's really important is looking at the R0 statistics, and in parentheses what I put there was just some stats associated with some of these other illnesses. There's just 3 of them I put there. So Ebola had an R0 of 1.5 to 2.5. What you shoot for is anything sub 2.
What does this mean, R naught?
It's like the probability of it being transmitted. So it's just a term, if you study stats like R0, it's like the probability of you catching it and then giving it to someone else. So Ebola, I mean, that's actually a really good number because you're shooting sub 2, and if you get below 1, you essentially win. And it's not going to be a full-blown pandemic, right? So the thing about Ebola is, though, if you got Ebola, you're screwed. Because the mortality rate in certain times when it was going around was upwards of 60 to sometimes 70% mortality rate. Yeah, that was a bad one. But why is the R0 so low? That's a disease that if you catch it, it destroys the host so fast that really is no chance for transmission because you're sick as a dog, you get quarantined immediately, and then you're dead. We need to monitor COVID-19 as it progresses, and these numbers are going to be updated on the CDC over and over and over again, okay? The measles R0 is between 8 to 12, so you look at one like that, and you're like, whoa, that's actually definitely more of a contagious disease, and it spreads, but what's the mortality? 0. No one dies from the measles. Is the media handling it well? Nope. Are the CDC and the NIH handling it well? That seems that still kind of stands as we'll find out when it becomes more of a. I know up in Washington, because that's where I'm from. Up in Washington, they're kind of freaking out, and they've had 9, 10 now at this point, fatalities, and that's where the only deaths in the US are coming from right now. But we're talking rest homes and things like that. I mean, they're already kind of primed for catching something like this, getting pneumonia and passing. Here's some recommendations. So again, like I said, reducing R0 below 1 through isolation and sanitation. That really is a good priority to consider. If it starts spreading around in Utah, just be mindful of that. And there's some tips I'm going to go over here about suggestions on what you can consider doing. They say shaking hands, hugging, that might go away for a while. Don't put your hands above your shoulders. That's just a really silly way of don't touch your face. It's just a different way to say it, because if you don't put your hands above your shoulder, like I could tell you, don't pick your nose. You're going to pick your nose anyways, right? Or we're talking to kids, right? Don't lick that. Like, don't put your hands in your mouth. Like, when you say it and give it that kind of like order, don't put your hands above your shoulders, it's a little bit different, okay? So bleach sanitation wipes can be helpful. We especially want to be sanitizing things like public doorknobs, keypads, door handles, things like that. Yeah, doctor's offices for sure, because where do sick people go? Here, right? Masks, if you're going to use them, they have to be fitted very tight. And I'm talking about this because this is another problem that we're seeing is people are just going out and buying masks in bulk from like medical supplies. And now facilities like medical facilities like this one, they can't find them. They're sold out, right? So, and they are kind of actually pointless. So people that should be wearing masks are the ones that are infected. If you feel like garbage, stay at home, heal. It's our collective duty to bring the transmission dynamics down to as close to 0 as possible. If we're sub 1 or not, we've won, okay? There's a guy indulging in the no hands above your shoulders rule. These labs that we're dealing with, that are dealing with vaccines, are certainly dealing with live viruses. Escape of this type is bad news. And so James said, and this is why all of this actually should be in quotes, but I put this one specifically in quotes because this is kind of the take home of where this came from and what it is. 99% sure this is a lab sequence that was designed because the spike protein that's encoded, the same and uniquely identified one in the coronavirus previous, is the same spike protein that was described in a Chinese patent for a vaccine technique way back in 2008. So this is man-made. We're very confident of that, okay? So I'm just going to skip through this study because it's kind of irrelevant, but it's the same concept of get the vaccine for one thing, you're now predisposed to catching other things at a higher rate. I'll just read this here real quick. We randomized 115 kids to trivalent inactivated influenza vaccine, or TIV for short, or placebo. And that's how these studies should be done, is inert placebo, right? Over the following 9 months, TIV recipients had an increased risk of virologically confirmed non-influenza infections. The relative risk at 95%. That's statistically significant, okay? So let's let our bodies do the work with the correct interventions. The University of North Carolina, because he was asked, Dell asked him, James, what do you think? Should we be working on a vaccine for this? And this was his take. He said the University of North Carolina and so many more are working on antivirals. There are so many other sources to combat these things that a vaccine is a poor choice at this point. And then he said, look up some of Ben Collins' research. And pertussis, again, is a prime example of how these things just don't help. And you see it every year when the influenza vaccine comes out, or you go get your flu shots. Well, how effective is it? And check the CDC. I think this year's like 19% effective. And then you have to weigh the potential risks of getting the vaccine, okay? So what are we really seeing in the current data specific to coronavirus? This one came from Medscape 2 days ago, or 3 days ago. This is March 2nd. COVID-19 mortality rate may be considerably less than 1%. So when you look at Ebola, it's over 50, and COVID-19 is sub 1. That's why we're like, this guy's asymptomatic, right? He's on the cruise, he gets quarantined, he's here, he's like, oh no, now there's a dude in Utah that's got it. Well, guess what? Maybe a sniffle, like, just.
I don't think he's had anything.
Right.
Like nothing.
So.
Just boredom.
Right.
Yeah,
Once you get in a
exactly
hospital.
boredom.
So there's a video I'm going to show you right now, and I thought this was super cool. So let's watch this, and then we'll just talk about some natural remedies that you can be using to just prepare yourself for this type of stuff, and then we'll do Q&A and wrap up. I just really like this video. It's pretty cool. I'll kind of talk through this as this is going too. So you get what we're looking at here?
Yeah.
Every single day, it's counting on the calendar every single day how many people are actually confirmed diagnosed with COVID-19 and then the related deaths. So you're looking at deaths here, and watch it go. That's what I'm saying, is like, this is why people get scared. They're like, it's going fast, everyone's gonna get it, it's a pandemic, everyone in the world's gonna get sick.
But out of 10,000, 11, 12,000 people, okay, 362 out of 20,000 people.
People in concentration camps.
We're not even counting that.
No.
Yeah.
So I call this perspective. So that's why I wanted to show. Just think perspective in this video. See those percentages? It's 62% death rate, 65. So now the virus starts to just skyrocket and it's passing all of these. This is the R naught stuff I was talking about though. Like transmission, very low. This is killing everyone. Remember this one? H1N1? Watch this go.
Music's definitely terrifying.
That's just,
Music's terrifying.
yeah.
And we're all dead now.
So if you remember back in 2009, right? That's what I was talking about, the election cycle. 2010 was another election cycle, right?
Did they figure out anything about this one?
60 million.
Yeah, that was the H1N1, and you know everyone was panicking and doing the same thing they're doing now. But again, look at the death rate, 0.5%. You got the swine flu, H1N1. Oh my goodness, like you might be laid up for a couple days with some sniffles, right?
That's pretty bad. Same one, basically.
Yeah. Except back then, think about 1918, sanitation, you know, right?
Take out 0.08%.
Right. This is the cool part, which makes you want to just consider healthy living. The stats you'll see here are pretty outstanding. Yeah, per day.
Yeah, so I was gonna ask you about
Right?
You were dying of the flu right now.
Right. Way more.
No one talks
They're
about
also
it.
going to work really incredible.
right? That's every day.
Wow.
What is this video?
I'll share all this with
All
you.
other causes, 73,000.
I'll put the link, so this is on YouTube, I'll put the link to this
Isn't it under who?
in the
right?
email. Yeah, I think so. I'll show you what it's titled. So you just watch, all of a sudden you'll see coronavirus just fly through there and then it's gone. There it goes.
You get hit by a dog, you die.
There goes coronavirus again. Okay, then they relate it to the Spanish flu. I'll show you that one. This is what it was like back in 1918.
Oh, man.
There you're in trouble. That was killing tons of people. Did you see that stat that flashed up
Yeah.
that said 1/3 of the world's population got that one?
What was it that, like, rate on that for the Spanish flu?
Oh, it was high. I forget the exact
Was it
percentage.
10%?
Yeah, it was over 10%.
Even that's not.
But what's
bad.
interesting, think about this. So Dan Murphy, he's kind of the research guru in our world in chiropractic. He's really big on this research that was actually done around the Spanish flu in 1918. So they call that the Great Flu Pandemic of 1918. The people that were the healthiest were under chiropractic care. Chiropractic was a brand new profession, started in 1895.
All those crazy people.
And yeah, those crazy quacks that were getting adjusted, because we know for a fact scientifically that spinal manipulation therapies actually boost immune response or kind of create a healthier. So they were surviving the
You know,
flu
I heard
pandemic.
another statistic on that,
Mhm.
that the households that did not contract the flu in 1918,
Mhm.
they did a fairly large, like, subjective study, of course.
Right.
But they went through the households to see what they had in common, and they were like looking for just anything. And they found that households that had onions
Mhm.
sitting out in their open space in some kind of a container, just
Open,
sitting
yeah.
there open, those were the households that did not have the flu virus.
Interesting. That's
Yeah.
cool.
And so ever since I read that, I've always kept an open container of onions sitting on my counter.
That's awesome.
And my dentist, who's very holistic, says that they have one in every room on the bedstead, like on
cool.
the nightstand.
Just
That's
like a
cool.
hole in it.
Just a whole onion sitting
Yeah.
there, and they're like, and it's interesting, if you think about like all of the lore, the witches that used to wear garlic.
Right, right.
There's gotta be
There's
something
it.
to that, right? So, anyway.
Absolutely.
Energy needs something.
Right?
So just in summary, what are the takeaways? It's spreading fast, we know that. It's nowhere near as fatal as Ebola or MERS. And that article I just showed you, even speculates now it's under 1%. So not even like 2.2, it's under 1. Did you see the title of the video there?
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, take a picture of that.
Your plan.
Eat well, exercise, drive safely, or don't drive at all, like you said. Okay, pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
I like that video. Okay,
And who put that out? Like,
I think I saw who? The
meaning World Health Organization
Yeah,
did
I
that?
think that's
Think
what
so,
the
yep.
channel was when you first put it up.
I'm surprised that they did
Wow,
something
we
that
can't
reasonable.
I mean, yeah.
so there's a graph again. I'm going to send you this PowerPoint. You'll have all this information, but that's just a pretty slick way to look at it. I mean, when you saw that thing spiking, that H1N1, I mean, they had over 762 million, but look at the fatality rate, 0.02%. It was in 214 countries. So right now, COVID-19 is in 24 countries, including the United States. It's here. We know it's here. It could spread like wildfire. I'm not worried about it. That's kind of the take-home message of tonight. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. The hysteria and the media hysteria is it could potentially cause some problems like the shutdowns and things that we're talking about, right? But don't be afraid. And if ye are prepared, ye shall not fear. So what are we supposed to do? How can we be proactive in protecting ourselves and our families? There's a list. Zinc, glycyrrhizin, myricetin, scoltolarian. I spelled that wrong. You'll see a study that has the right spelling. Resveratrol, vitamin D, vitamin C. Products that I personally use in my office, there are two specific ones. One's called trisomal glutathione, which is a relatively new product that Apex came out with, and a product called X-Viramin. Those are awesome. And I'll send you the 8-page research summaries that talk about those two products specifically. The trisomal glutathione and the X-Viramin.
Who
Okay?
makes experiments? Which one? Is it Design-
Apex does that
Apex,
too,
okay.
yeah. I'm a big Apex fan. I know Dr. Karazian. He's one of my mentors and idols. I love his work, and he's the one that formulates all those supplements, and so I trust the product, absolutely. So I'm a big fan of Apex.
Everything I've ever used from them I've liked.
Yeah, so I set out an example of some of the things, and I would consider it using these homeopathics, right? That's what Dr. Farley Jones and the group up here, it's like they do this all the time with their patients. She actually told me a really cool story the other day when I popped in, where she's been practicing for over 20 years, and every single patient, she hasn't had one single patient that she's given influenzinum to that has come back and reported that they've ever got the flu. Ever. It's really
And
cool.
Homeopathics are really like, if you had to categorize, they are very symptom specific.
Right.
And symptoms for the coronavirus are the same symptoms for the flu.
Yeah.
And so if you're looking.
That's why these would work.
Yeah.
Right?
Influenzinum we use, and I have a page in the dispenser if anybody wants to stop in and get it. It just tells you how to take it. You take it over a 4 to 6 week period, just once a week, skipping a week, and it's very effective.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And then the oxylococcinum is what you take at the onset
Mhm.
of symptoms.
When you're feeling symptoms.
Immediately.
Yeah.
I've used that for years, and it's been great.
It is good stuff.
Yeah.
So these are so now I'm going to give all the credit to Dr. Alex Vasquez. This guy's a stud. He does these really simple breakdowns, so it's easy to read and easy to understand. These are research articles. This one's from The Lancet, 2003, talking about glycyrrhizin from licorice extracts. And specific to SARS, so the virus that we're actually talking about, that's why I'm posting these, is because these have already been studied and showed that they do certain things with the SARS coronavirus, okay? So there's his thing. That inhibits
I have a question,
replication.
just like
Yeah.
the amount that would be in like the licorice root tea,
Uh-huh.
would that make any difference
That's
at
a
all?
good question. I just whenever I look at these studies, I always go back to their methodology and
Yeah.
look in the study to see what amount or what dose they were
Because
using.
glycyrrhizin, you're not gonna find like, anyway, well, I'll look at it.
Okay.
Okay.
Justifying zinc. So zinc inhibits coronavirus activity in vitro. So zinc inhibits coronavirus and enterivirus RNA polymerase activity in vitro, and zinc ionophores block the replication of these viruses in cell culture. So zinc, very powerful. That was always one that mom was like, oh, you're getting sick, go take some zinc, right? I didn't know why. There's research that shows that it actually works. Here's the abstract about the myricetin and the scoltolarian. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Oh, I did spell it right.
I don't even know what that is.
Yeah, I looked that up. That's why I posted this study here. It's a common plant-derived flavonoid. Where do you get it though? I gotta look into that more, and I'll see if I can get you that information. I like this at the bottom of this study. Our study demonstrates for the first time that selected naturally occurring flavonoids, including myricetin and scoltolarian, might serve as SARS-CoV chemical inhibitors. There's one about resveratrol, vitamin C. Then we dig in and we look at vitamin D. What does it do? What does it not do? You will never see the same advantages and benefits with any vaccine or drug where he's talking about this. Efficacy against a wide range of human bacterial, viral, and respiratory infections. So when you're talking about just like A good old solid staple is something we should all probably be taking every day, vitamin D. Okay? So go get those from the dispensary, okay? Homeopathics are awesome. These are just a couple of slides that talk about influenzinum, the rust tox, arsenicum album, okay? Gelsemium, is that how you say that? Gelsemium. That's it. I'm Dr. Oliver. I work downstairs. Neuroclinic's my baby. Reach out anytime. Come see me. Tell all your friends.
I always do.
Okay.
Pretty
Thank you.
cool.
I appreciate
I know I
it.
need to come see you again.
Anytime.
Yeah, wow.
Anytime. Any questions? You want to talk about anything? Did you find that helpful at all? Informative?
Very.
Okay.
Yeah, really cool.
Okay.
Really cool. My dad is, we just moved, my mom and dad to assisted living place.
Yeah.
And he's kind of like a little freaked out about everything that's going on. So it'd be cool to show him some of this stuff.